We're going to kick today's show off with a man that holds a 16-1 record with 11 KOs. He goes by the nickname Kid Kansas, and he's one of the top prospects in all of America right now. That's Alan Garcia. Alan, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
I appreciate you having me, man. If I'm excited.
Absolutely, man. Well, first things first, you're just coming off another big win just a few weeks ago now. You guys, Cristian, Medina, Garcia, on a unanimous decision, 79-73 across all three scoreboards. Now that you've looked through this, I'm sure you watched back the fight a little bit, reflected on it. What's your thoughts on that performance?
A great fight, man. A
Mm-hmm.
great fight. Got a great coach. We've known him for a while, the coach, anyways. And so when they sent us the opponent, right away I knew who the coach was, and
Okay.
I just knew it was going to be a great fight overall.
When you look back at that fight, obviously you can always learn some things from the fight. Do you feel like there's something you grew from, and if so, what were some of those things?
The whole game plan going into the fight was to box, and as you can tell, that was how I was starting off, was to box and box.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to stay in my grill, and he was looking for that shot, so he just kept looking for that knockout shot, you know what I mean? And I could see that,
Right.
and right away, my coach is telling me just box, box, box. And instead of, it was my first fight back with Top Rank after the loss, so
Mm-hmm.
I got, instead of fighting with this, I started fighting with, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I just wanted to show people that I am like that I can take the shot and keep going forward, you know what I mean? So just learning. I gotta stay more disciplined to the game plan sometimes.
Right.
All glory to God, we came out with the win, and we gave the fans a good fight.
When you look at that, are you happy with that performance? Like, do you feel like you accomplished what you want to accomplish? Both from, obviously, when you look at fights when you're still younger, you want to get better, you want to develop those fights. Obviously, it's not like a world championship fight yet, but did you feel like you accomplished what you wanted to in that fight?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to come back and like I said, show people that I'm still one of those guys. I'm still dangerous, and
Right.
that I can still make it happen. And I think I went out there, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I did get caught in the second round. Everyone's thinking that it was the uppercut that shook me, but it. He hit me with the uppercut, and I was gonna go in for a clinch, and then
Right.
he hit me with the shot towards the side of the ear,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the one that kind of shook me up a little bit. But prior to the fight, I told the referee, "Hey, watch his punch the back of the head."
Mm.
And in the fight, man, I went back and counted it, and there were so many times that he caught me behind the head. And I remember even in the fight, I told the ref, behind the head. And
Mm-hmm.
the ref told me, fight through it. And I'm like, that's when I was like, oh man. And so that's when I went to changing the game plan. And instead of just staying on the outside where he could get that shot behind the head, I started hitting and getting inside where he wasn't comfortable.
I want to kind of dive into that component of boxing because I know a lot of people to sit down and watch these fights and whatnot, and you guys usually have a game plan going into it. Now, sometimes those game plans work all the way throughout a fight. Sometimes they don't. I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what you're referring to right now, where you have a certain set plan for that fight. Things happen in the ring. You have to change a little bit. Can you take us to the mentality and the mental aspect of that, and how do you approach that? When do you first of all realize that it's time to change things up a little bit, and then second of that, then how do you kind of adjust in the midst of a fight?
Well, that's why you got rounds. It's you go in there with the game plan just off of film,
Right.
right? Then you get in there, but you also got to remember he's watching film to adjust to you.
Right.
So you go in there the first couple rounds, it's fill out rounds, and you see, okay, he's doing something completely different than what he usually does.
Mm-hmm.
I like, for example, this fight, and we knew he was gonna walk forward, but he wanted to stay in my grill, and so I let him in, and I knew that I throw a lot of punches. I do. And so
Right.
he, like I said, he was looking for that one big shot. And so my whole thing was just out punch him, out punch him, out punch him, and catch him, work the body, slow him down. I'm a big body puncher. I love working the body.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that took, that played a big factor in the fight. I kept shooting for the body, landed the double body shots each side, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they slowly wore him down. The last round, I would say 30 seconds, I knew I hurt him, and then when I cut him and he started backpedaling, I knew I had him hurt, man. If I would have had just another minute, I feel like I could have got him out of there,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Yeah.
But man, that dude was a tough, tough fighter. Any of my other opponents or any other person in there, they wouldn't have been able to take those shots.
Right.
But he was a great fighter, man. Never been put down or anything. So kudos to him. And like I said, he has a great team behind him. He trained with Canelo's brother, Rigoberto,
Mhm.
and I'm just happy we both came out good and well after the fight.
I introduced you in the beginning of this interview saying that you are one of the top prospects in America, and that's obviously a case. And so I want people to get to know you because obviously your future is still very bright, but I want people to get to know who you are and who this upcoming prospect is. And so if we head all the way back, you grew up out there in Kansas. That's why you have your nickname Kid Kansas, I'm assuming. So I got to ask about that because Kansas is not necessarily a hotbed of overall boxing talent. Now, there are some. We know Eric Priest obviously is one, and he just had a great performance this weekend, but it's not a very popular hotbed of boxing. Yet we have more and more of these young guys like yourself and Eric Priest coming out of Kansas. So how did you get into boxing? What was it about boxing that drew you into it?
I was 5 years old,
Mhm.
and there was a neighborhood bully at the park, and he was always picking on me and my siblings, and he was a little older than me. And I would always get into fights, and I'd go back. And I lived right next door to the park, so I would go home and tell my dad, "Oh, I got in a fight. I got in a fight." And my dad sometimes he would peek out the window and see me fighting, and he would just wait for me to come back and tell him. And then one day I got in a fight at school because a kid pushed me out of line, and after that I was in kindergarten, and then my dad told me, my big brother, "You're gonna try boxing." We're like, "Yeah." He took
Mhm.
us to the gym. We were training. It wasn't even the gym. We were training at a shed. Like Ulysses'
Okay.
population 5,000, 6,000. So we didn't have an actual gym. It was just a little shed, and there was heavy bags, speed bags, double M bags, and we went the first day. The very next day, we're playing the video game. My dad comes in the room. "What are you guys doing?" "We're on the game." "No, come on, we're going to the gym." We're like, "Oh, okay." And so we started going every day, and then we started competing, and you're a kid at that point in my life. It was just all fun. Like I loved it. Um, when you're about 13 years old, they start talking about, "Oh, what do you want to do when you're older? What do you want to do when you're older?" And I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, "I want to be a pro boxer."
Mm.
And from there forth, I remember even like when I wasn't in the gym, I'd be in the basement watching like Brandon Rios and Mikey Alvarado. I would always watch
Okay.
that fight, and I'd be down there shadow boxing and just stuff like that, and it all carried up into when I was older, just competing and trying to better myself, and once I knew like boxing was what I wanted to do, I started putting my everything into it, and 16 was my last amateur tournament. I turned 17 and moved out to Los Angeles to work with Coach G, and from there it all went up.
When would you say it clicked for yourself when you said, you know what, I'm ready to go take the next step? I know that this is not just something that I enjoy anymore. It's something that I know I can pursue. It can be my life. It can provide a living for myself. When did that become a realization for you?
I think it all became a realization when I was always the underdog in tournaments. Like you said, Kansas. Like nobody looks at Kansas and like, "Oh man, these crazy fighters." It's always like Texas, Philadelphia, New York,
Right.
California, and I was just always the underdog, and I'd be out there beating the bigger guys. I didn't know how to cut weight. I didn't- you know
Mm.
the I wouldn't cut weight. I would be fighting. My last amateur tournament, I was 16 fighting at 141, and I was skinny. But now that I know about cut and everything, I could have made 132 or maybe even 125.
Mm.
But just that grit that I have and had as a kid, it was just something I was really devoted to, and I just felt like I had it, and I feel like I do.
You talked about the weight cutting aspect, and I want to ask about that because that's obviously become something I think more and more in the past decade or so, we've seen it become a skill set. Obviously,
Mhm.
guys weight cut more than others and whatnot, but obviously, you're talking amateur at that point in time. When you're going through that and you're pushed in a sense to be able to go up there and have to fight against guys that are, much bigger than you, because I know a lot of other guys are weight cutting and whatnot. How much did that make you better now that you look back at it hindsight?
Well, it was all up when I got into, like I said, working with Coach G and learning, about cutting and stuff. And when I first got to LA, I was 163, like, and she was
Okay.
like, "Yeah, we're gonna get you down to 130." I looked at her, I was like, "I'm not making 130." Sure enough, she got me down to 130 for my
Mhm.
pro debut, and just from there, I think it was after I would say my eighth pro fight. where me myself as an athlete, I started digging into learning about the body, protein, carbs, macronutrients, like
Right.
all that stuff, and I figured just I started learning out like how much of a factor that really plays. Like I consider myself a pretty big 135,
Yeah.
and it's just I just kept learning, doing the best that I can, and now I'm out where I'm at.
I said about the intro, you go by the nickname Kid Kansas. Can you take us to the backstory of that? How did that nickname come to be?
Man, my coach would always call me kid, and I would tell them, like, man, I'm not a kid. Quit calling me kid. And one day we were driving home we went, I don't know, we went to go spar Ryan or who. We went to go spar somebody, and she told me, she was like, man, like, what's your nickname? And before I would go by El Gallo Hiro, and she was like, nah, not that one. And she was like, well, I always call you kid. What about Kid Kansas? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, I like that. And it just kind of stuck because I always wanted to represent where I was from. And
Right.
because, like you said yourself, people, there's not a lot of talent that's come out of here, anyways. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always want to put on and represent where I'm from. For example, after every fight, I come home. I don't go Hollywood or I don't forget about where I came from. I
Mm-hmm.
come back and try to inspire the youth, try to, just do my best as a role model.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that aspect because that's something that, like you said, not every boxer, every person wants to go out there and do. You make that a priority to come back home, give back, be a role model, and represent a place in Kansas for yourself. So, what kind of led you to that? Talk about just the inside of your mentality that says, you know what, I want to value my family, I want to value where I'm from, and really place an emphasis on that.
Well, I didn't even have to think about it. It's just like
Okay.
the reason I do what I do is because I love my family. You know what I mean? I do what I do because I want to one day give them everything that we don't have. And we're not I'm not saying we're like, like struggling or anything, but
Right.
it's definitely nice to be like, hey, let's all go to Cancun, or let's all take a trip here, or
Mm,
if my mom's starting up her business, here, mom, here's some money, just to make life a little easier. But
right.
for me, at the end of the day, all the materialistic stuff don't matter. It's all so I just try to just chase God, and you know just continue elevating, being the best person that I can be, and just just try to live what we do.
I want to ask you a little bit more about your relationship with God because that's obviously a huge thing for myself as well. And so I want to ask that about you. What implemented that into your life? Has that been something you've grown up with? Did it develop over the duration of your life? Or when did you really start taking a prioritization of your relationship with God?
So I always grew up in the church. I got
Mhm.
baptized when I was like 8 or 9,
Sure.
in a Catholic church, and but it wasn't, you're a kid. It's not really your choice to go to church. It was
Right.
just like, oh, you're gonna go, and we would go to church classes and stuff like that. And so, as I got older, um, well, then I moved and everything. This is when I'm not gonna throw his name out there, but he's a professional boxer as well. He started having Bible studies at his house, and we would go. And this is in the year 2021, and I'm like, man, like, yeah, I went to the church that they were going to,
Hmm.
and it felt good. I felt the like I could say I felt the Holy Spirit, and I had never really felt that. And now that I was a little older, then I got rebaptized because I wanted it to be my choice to devote my life to God, and to
Hmm.
to accept Jesus as my savior. And so I did, and a couple months later, after getting baptized, I lost my little brother. My little brother passed away,
Hmm.
and I never once sat there and thought why God, like why, you know. I was just
Hmm.
more of the understanding, but it was a thin line. I was always trying to just figure stuff out,
Right.
and I'm grateful that I took like that negative situation in my life, and tried to look at it in a positive outlook and a positive perspective, and just this year something just clicked in me, and I wanted to just keep keep chasing God,
Mm,
and it's especially with a lot of stuff that's going on. Um, I don't want to be a lukewarm Christian. I don't. And
I
so I'm
love it.
trying to be better. I'm trying to be the best that I can. Of course, I'm human. I have my flaws,
Yep.
but I can say that I'm trying and I'm proud of how far I've gotten. And, like
Well,
I said, all this fleshly stuff don't matter. It's all about making it into the kingdom. So
yep. Well, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this, man, because the first component you talk about there is you talk about your brother, and there's something that's so many people listening to that. How did you get through that in a peaceful way? How do you do these things? And so many people are going to look at that are not believers. They don't understand the love Jesus has for you and what people are able to go to when they leave this earth. And that's such a hard thing for so many people to fathom. And I understand this obviously never going to be easy. But you talk about that. You found peace somehow in the midst of a massive trial and tribulation on earth that can't not be accomplished without the grace of God and without Jesus, in my opinion. And you were able to talk about that. And so I want you to elaborate a little bit more because so many people listening to this will go through something tough in their life. Maybe similar to that, maybe different, but it'll be a tough time. And you talk about finding peace in those situations. How do you do that? And how did you experience that peace and that love from Jesus in that tough tribulation?
I'm not gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It
Mm-hmm.
At first I didn't. At first I hurt. It was because my
Right.
biggest thing about moving is that something would happen to my siblings while I was gone.
Mm,
And then I was home at the time and I was in the gym and I had, got the call and it was just a lot to happen. And at the time I'm 18 years old. So of course I was emotional about it. I was a wreck and I would just have dreams and stuff and like just deep thoughts, man. Like I wouldn't go to sleep till like 4, 5, 6 in the morning. I would
mm,
wake up at like 1 or 2, and then you know go through it again emotionally. But I think a lot of it had to do with like the love people were showing, and like that we did have a lot of prayers coming through, and a lot. People aren't telling you, "Oh, we wish you the best." They're telling you, "Hey, we're praying for you." You know what I mean? And so
mm,
that plays a big part in it because people genuinely care, and there's people that are really out there, like I said, trying to connect their life with God, and I think that had a lot to do with it. And um, as far as the boxing aspect, I was going through it, man. Like I said, I was going through it. Um, and Rolando,
mm-hmm. Yep.
he reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, like, what's up, Alan? How are you?" And I told him like, I'm here. And he said, "I want you to come out to California, finish camp with me." He was getting ready to fight Austin Dulé before it
Okay.
had gotten canceled. And I'm like, "Man, I'm not in shape. I can't go spar or anything." And he was like, "Nah, nah, like, I just need someone to come train with and run with me, whatever." I was all right, cool. He booked the flight. He gave me a car while I was there. Had my own room and everything. He paid for my meal plans, like
Wow.
everything. And that put me right back into the game. Like I went back home and I called my coach and I was like, "I'm ready." Like she's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to come back. Give me a fight." So I went back to camp and got right back into the ring in November and just
Mm,
from there just started. Because one big thing for me is that, like I said, I want to give my family everything before we go.
right.
And with my brother, I wasn't able to do that. Like, because I wasn't making any money at the time. And
Mm,
so, that's why I always wear him on my back because I'll always keep his name alive.
mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing that played into it. But I'm just I'm just grateful, like I said, that God let me change my situation into something positive instead of going down the wrong road.
Right. And that's a huge thing too, because like I said, so many people are going to go through trials and tribulations. And that's something that the Bible talks about. Countless places throughout the verse, every single person we see in the Bible to begin with has trials and tribulations, and they go on and speak about how you're going to deal with those as well. The question is for each person, are you going to follow Jesus? Are you going to follow him and trust in him? Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but are you going to still put your faith and trust and allow him to work in and through you? Or are you going to turn your back on him and go the opposite direction? You obviously we know which way you chose. You chose to follow Jesus the best of your ability. but that's not the decision that everybody makes. And I get it. It's tough in those situations. Why would you trust the king of the universe if he just allows something bad to happen if you don't understand those portions yet? What led you to say, you know what? I'm going to put my faith and trust in you, and I'm going to just go choose your path, your way, even after everything that's happened to me.
Faith, man. It's.
Mm,
I've always read so much about how your faith's got to be stronger than anything. If you don't got faith, you don't got nothing with them. And
yep.
seeing the miracles that he's worked in my life, there's always going to be rainbow for the rainbow. And
Yep.
I've seen the quote where you can't ask for rain and not deal with the mud. And
Yep.
so I've seen what God has done for me, and what he allows me to keep doing. I've had dreams, man, crazy dreams. And it's not just regular dreams that you have. Maybe one day I'll speak about those dreams when I feel like I got a bigger platform. But man, it's just God is good, and I'm
Mm,
grateful. Like I said, there's a reason I'm at where I'm at today, and it wouldn't be possible without God. I'm able to continue doing what I love, to do it in a healthy way. I'm wiser as a 22-year-old. Like, I'm signed with the promotion of my dreams. And I'm
mm-hmm.
I'm able to take my family to my fight. Like, it's just so much. People people tend to just pay attention to all the bad things that happen in their life, and they forget to count their blessings. I have a car.
Mm,
I have a roof over my head. I have
right.
food in my stomach. I have a lot of my family. I got friends that care for me. I got, what I mean? I
Yep.
got a big support system. Like, there's just there's endless blessings, and people tend to get too used to their blessings to where they don't learn to appreciate them. They just appreciate, or they just focus on all the bad that's happening to them because it's stuff they're not used to. It's situations they're not used to. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you gotta just trust in God's plan, and trust whatever He has in store for you. Hey, if God says, you know what, you're not meant to be a world champion, that's a tough pill to swallow, but I would swallow it, because like I
Right.
said, this fleshly stuff does not matter. It does not matter. I'm doing it
Mm-hmm.
because I love it and I like to provide. But at the end of the day, this stuff does not matter. I always ask God, hey, Lord, if this is your plan for me, open any blessings you have for me and close the doors that aren't for me.
Mm.
And if it's not in His plan for you, then you have to accept that. That's just the way I see it, and the way that my perspective sits on it.
Has that mindset always been the mindset for yourself? Have you always had a mindset of saying, you know what, even if this is not my will, I know it's God's will, I'm going to embrace that, or did that take time to develop?
That took time to develop for sure.
Okay.
And man, more so when I started, you know, I don't know how it happened, but my everyone's on social media. My TikTok started going from just random videos to I have a favorite preacher, and his name's Philip Anthony Michaels.
Mitchell, yep.
Oh yeah, Mitch. And
Hmm.
man, that guy. He's always popping up. He was the first to
He's
start
good,
popping up
yep.
and popping up, and then just more and more and more videos. I don't know how it got into my algorithm or what, but it's there, and I'm grateful for it. Because
Hmm.
even when I feel like I'm slipping up, I don't realize I'm slipping up until a video pops up or a song, something, and then I feel convicted, and I'm like, man, I gotta get back on track. I gotta do
Mm,
better. I gotta want to be better.
right. Absolutely, man. Well, I want to get back into your journey, get back into your boxing career. So we head back into this now. Obviously, we talked about your amateur career. You had a good amateur career, and then you decided to make a new career adjustment. At the age of 16, you decided to move on from amateurs, and you eventually go pursue your pro dreams at 17, which is when you debuted. Why did you decide to make that move? Why did you want to make that move at a younger age as opposed to waiting a little bit later on in life?
Cause I was 16, losing to people that I didn't even lose to, people I was beating. And
Mm,
I would sit there, I'm like, man, is it because I'm from Kansas? Like, what's going on? And it was after the US Nationals. I gave the dude 8 counts, and I
mm,
still lost
mm.
unanimously.
Wow.
And I was just like, I said, I'm done. If I'm gonna be punching people, I'm gonna get paid for it. I'm gonna start building my legacy now. I don't care if I gotta go to Mexico and start there. And that's exactly what I did. And
Mm-hmm.
people always try to dog on fighters. Ryan Garcia did that. Devin
Yep.
Haney did that. That's where Canelo's from. He did that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And now look at these fighters now. They're the ones on the big screen.
Yep. Let's go into that journey for yourself because you debut in Mexico, and that's where you have to perform for the beginning portions of your career. This has to be a little bit different. Obviously, you're going to a foreign country, you're fighting out there. What is that whole experience like?
It was it was cool. It was different because it was during the pandemic. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
when you can hear that other guy breathing and you hear his coach yelling and then you hear my coach, she's giving me my instructions. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like this is like I know how Ryan and Devin Haney and Teal felt, during the whole the
Times
fight
Square
in New
thing?
York,
Yeah.
because they're like, man, it felt like sparring. I'm like, yeah, I know, because that's literally what, and we're in it, like you can hear everything in there, and so it was like that for the first two.
Mm-hmm.
The third fight, I went to go fight in Guadalajara, and that guy came out to fight. You know what I mean? You go
Mm-hmm.
to Mexico to get your feet wet. See what it's all about. But that guy came out to fight. He's coming out to swing, and I broke his nose in the. I don't even remember what round it was so long ago, but I broke his nose, and I was like, man. And that one there was a crowd there, so
Okay.
it was pretty cool. And then once I started fighting in the U.S., um, I loved it even more. Then I started building, a fan base. Like I got people that are traveling to watch me fight, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize it until like I would be done with the fights, and I go take pictures, and they're like, "Yeah, we came from so and so," and like it's cool. You got people that
Mm-hmm.
support you and genuinely want to see you do well. They're spending their hard-earned money to see you do what you do and to see you perform. And to me,
Right.
that it means a lot. It means the world.
You talked about the aspect of when you go into these fights and there's no environment. And I know there's a lot of debate when the Times Square card happened. Was that an impact? Was that something that possibly influenced how the results ended up going on that fight? Obviously, we'll never know the exact answers there. But for yourself, though, you've experienced, like you said, a place where there is no crowd and it feels almost like sparring. Does having a crowd impact you as a fighter? Does that bring more motivation, maybe rise your ability to fight in that fight? Or what impact does a crowd have when you are in the ring for an official fight?
I think depending on the fighter, it can. Some fighters like Gervonta Davis, he said it himself. When he walks out, and he hears people excited. He said it pumps him up. And you got
Hmm.
some fighters, they say when they walk out, they just laser focused. So I think it could have played a factor to the people that are interacting, and they feel the energy of
Sure.
the crowd. But I don't think every fighter's like that. I think every fighter has their own perspective on that. Me, genuinely, I love it. I like it. I like, hearing the even when I'm in the ring and we hit, even if I'm getting hit with a good shot and I hear the crowd, like I like that because it lets me know, that we're doing we're in there doing what we're supposed to do, and that's uh give the crowd a good fight.
Now, if I were to ask you this question, if I would have known you when you were 17 and you made your professional debut, and I would have said, hey, Alan, when you are going to be at this point in your life, 22 years old, you'll be 16-1 with 11 KOs. Would that have been shocking to you? Is that exactly what you expected to have happened? Do you feel like you've underachieved? How would you have reacted if I would have told you where you were at this point in time?
I would have said, "How you know?" Nah, and I would have been like, "Well, I hope I'm 17 and 0." But because
Okay.
no boxer ever thinks about losing. But
Yeah.
it's boxing, man. You're throwing punches at each other. You make
Mhm.
mistakes in the ring, and some mistakes are big mistakes that cost you the fight, and that's just exactly what happened. I made the perfect mistake, and I paid for it.
Mm. I want to go into that loss for yourself because so many boxers end up achieving that loss at some point in their careers. And I feel like we're all getting to a point where it's starting to be viewed a little bit better now in the sense of, okay, if you lose, but you improve from it and you're fighting good fighters, whatever, that's fine. But obviously, traditionally from the Floyd Mayweather era, that one is something that nobody ever wants to add to their resume. You're young. You obviously get caught in that fight. Can you take us to the mental aspect of that fight? How did you react to that and the aftermath of that fight?
I just remember seeing the punch coming.
Mm-hmm.
I went to catch and shoot, but when I work with my coach, we work so quick on the catch and shoot that I was too fast for my own good, and I didn't even catch the punch yet, and I went to shoot mine, and bam,
Yeah.
next thing you know, I hear the ref counting, and I was like, damn, I'm on the floor. And he caught me right on the money, so I tried to get up, and my equilibrium was way off, and I couldn't beat the count.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking into the back room, and I'm walking through the tunnel, and everyone's like, man, don't worry about it, you're good. And once I walked into the back room, that's when it really hit me, because it was just me and my coach. It
Right.
wasn't no crowd. It wasn't no refs. It wasn't nobody else. It was just me and my coach. And that's where it hit me. And I was just like, man, like I really lost, but I got knocked out. And I was like, it hit me. I texted my dad. He was in the arena. I said, damn, Pops, I'm sad. And he said, I know, dude, but come out here and show the fans the kind of guy you are. So I went out there to go look for my dad, and I'm trying to get up to his seat. And everyone like, pictures, pictures, pictures. And I'm
Mm.
taking pictures, and people, man, you're a great fighter. Don't give up. Don't worry about that. Like from everyone, boom, 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 boom.
Right.
And so then I went back down because I was like, oh, I'm trying to get to my pops. And then people see me trying to get to my pops. They're like, oh, no, go ahead, go ahead. And so I just ran up there, and afterwards I got home. I know it's crazy because like people where I'm from, like I said, it's small, so people know me. They would
Right.
see me in like the gas station or the grocery store, and they would be like they'd be hesitant to talk to me or even look at me. They'd be like, "Oh man," and
Mm-hmm.
it was something I wasn't used to. Like, and I didn't like people feeling bad for me. Like, I'm still human. I still got a whole life outside of boxing. You know what I
Right.
mean? And like, so it just sucked. And then I was getting a bunch of hate on social media, calling me a hype jobber, they're overrated, or just I was getting emails like death threats and stuff. Like it was just
Real wow.
crazy. Like yeah, like I got them all on my other phone, and it was just wild. I was getting turned into a meme. They got like millions and millions and millions of views. Like I was just like, people told me stay off social media. Nope. I said I'm gonna go right in there and cool, face it head on. Cause I'm a big believer if you can't change it, or you can't do nothing about it, learn to understand, accept, and move forward. It
Right.
happens. You got so much time to be mad, and then you got the rest of your life to get over it. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Especially if you can't change it, get over it. Learn to accept
Right.
things for what they are. And so, like I said, I accepted it. I feel like it's like a part of my story that's gonna make it even better, and that's up for me to determine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I took it for what it was. I had my comeback fight with 360 Promotions. Shout out to Tom Loeffler for letting me fight on this card. And
Mm-hmm.
then, Top Rank gave me this last fight, and I went out there, did what I did, and won the fight.
I want to ask you about that possible fight because when you talk about your loss there, would that ever be something you'd consider rematching him? Is that on the table? Would you want to get
Yeah,
back against him?
I
Would you
do.
have you moved on,
Yeah,
or what's your
I've already
thoughts?
talked to Top Rank about that.
Okay.
So, they for what? They're like, for what? You were beating them. You know you could beat them. You just got
Right.
caught. And of course, I want the fight, but then I know why they're telling me that. They're telling me, hey, let your ego go. You know what kind of fighter you are. Just and so I'm just like, yeah, but I still want that, of course, but I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see what goes on the table for that. Maybe because I got a great future ahead of me with plenty of talented fighters. But yeah, like I said, I wanted that fight, and I want that fight.
Okay. And I also asked you about this because that was a huge portion. You were up on all the scorecards 40-36 at the point that happened. Obviously, you're a better fighter than him. And when you look at it from that component, obviously you said the moment, probably a week or so after the fight, you're obviously dwelling on that loss or whatever. But now that you look back at it and you realize, you know what? I didn't lose that fight because of the fact that, hey, I'm not better than him. I got caught. It is what it is at the end of the day about that component. Does that help in the realization, the confidence aspect for yourself, knowing that you still are a great fighter, just was the fact that you happen to get caught?
Like I said, it's boxing, and I understand you're throwing punches, I'm throwing punches. We're either gonna bang it out or somebody's getting, getting
Right.
stopped. Like I said, I made the perfect mistake. I learned to understand, accept it, and move forward. It's like I said, all I can do is learn off of it. I can't change the results. I can't
Hmm.
change what people were saying or anything. All I can do is go out there and prove people right, and then prove the non-believers, turn them into believers.
Absolutely, man. Well, I got a few more things before I let you go. One of which is that since that loss, you've now bounced back two great wins for yourself. And so obviously you're still once again a hyped up prospect. You're only 22 years old. What's in the future for yourself? When you look at, let's say, even the next 12 to 18 months, year and a half, where do you see yourself? How many fights? What do you want to accomplish? Like, what do you have in store and what do you want to accomplish in the next 12 to 18 months for yourself?
Within the next 12 to 18 months, man, I'm waiting for that fight date. I'm gonna hopefully talk about Top Rank soon, see what's next on the table, and I trust them. They've been guiding my career, perfect so far. They do the business part. I just gotta go out there and do what I gotta do,
Hmm.
and it all works out smoothly. I hope I get back in the ring another 2, 3 times this year, maybe even four.
Okay.
So I love to stay active. I don't like to be out of the ring too long.
Right.
So, I wanna continue fighting. Hopefully within the next 18 months, I'm top 10 in the US or in the world actually,
Hmm.
and being considered for a world title. Because I got a great division, man. My division, I love watching it. It's
Yeah.
one of them ones. And if I go up to 140, then I go up to 140. But right now, like 135 is my bread and butter, and that's where I'm at.
I was actually going to ask you that question next. We know that you are at 135. You are 22 years old. So obviously things can still develop and change with your body moving forward. Do you feel like 135 is going to be the division you stay at for the foreseeable future? Or do you see yourself move up to 140 in maybe 2, 3, 4 years, something along those lines?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna move up into the next. I feel like I'm gonna be here for the next year and a half, maybe two
Okay.
years. And like I said, I've learned so much about the body and so much about my body that I'll know when it's time. I'm not gonna have to have a struggled weight cut to figure it out. I'll know
Okay.
when it's time to move up, and when it's time to make that call, we'll make that call. But right now, I'm chilling. I'm enjoying it. I love where I'm at, and just trying to continue to get better.
So then you would say that 140 is probably going to be the division you're going to settle in at for a little bit. Then that's going to be the one you're going to try working your way up as a world champion, those type of things eventually.
If that's in God's plan, then that's in God's plan. Maybe He's like, nah, forget 140. We're shooting you to 140. Like, who knows, man?
All
But I
right. Yep.
can't I can't tell you. But
Fair
I
enough. Yep.
know 35 is a great division, 40 is a great division, and 47 is a great division.
Hmm.
So I'm where the great fights are at, and wherever I gotta go, I'll go.
I love that, man. Well, a couple questions before I let you go. One of which is in regards to your hair. We know you have different hairstyles you show up for different fights with. Walk us through the backstory behind that. Has that always been with you as it kind of started up? And then just what's the story behind those different hairdos before each fight?
The first time I dyed my hair was my mom just decided she was gonna give me and my brother like like super blonde mohawks, and we were rocking it, man. Like everyone was like, "Oh, you guys look cool." And my dad would do our hair every morning before school with gel and so it was cool.
Right.
Um, I dyed it again when I was like 16, 15. Um, I watched a piece on Dennis Rodman, and
Okay.
I like the hair and the style, and his whole backstory behind it. And one time I was just like, I dyed the hair platinum, and people seeing it, and people were making fun of me. Ah, that's why he got knocked out for dyeing his hair. And so I said, "Oh yeah, now watch me dye it pink for this next fight." I said, "Now who wants to get beat by a guy with pink hair?" Dyed my hair pink. All right, we're doing red this outfit. I'm gonna dye my hair red with leopard print on the side. It's gone now, but it's everyone's been calling. They're like, Kid Rodman, Kid Rodman. Yeah, but nah, man, it's cool because it's eye catching. It's expressing myself. Whatever I feel like doing, I just do it. I let because I don't care what people think. I don't care what people say.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just a kid who dyes his hair and go out there and punches people in the face.
So this is going to be the foreseeable trademark for yourself, like going forward for the remainder of your career, we're going to different height your styles for each fight.
We just might, man. Who knows? Because if I start balling, I'm gonna have to take it back a little bit. But nah, man, it's cool. It's just like I said, and it just happens like that. Like it's not like I'm like planning. Like it's
Okay.
really like I'll dye my hair the week before the fight because I'm like, man, I feel like dyeing my hair. Well, hey, I hit up my guy, Christian Blend.
Mhm.
Hey, man, let's dye my hair. And
Okay.
we'll just get it done. Impulsive decisions.
Absolutely, man. Well, Alon, I got one final question for yourself, man. It's a question I'm wrapping up every single interview with, and that's talking about your legacy. When the day comes, I know it's still a long, long way down the road, but when you step away from boxing, what is it that you want to be remembered for what you've accomplished both inside and outside of that ring?
Man, just a kid from Kansas. It's I want to I want to show that, like I said, there's always rainbow for the rainbow. Hopefully, when I get my bigger platform, I'll be able to help guide the youth and the older into the right direction, and just using my platform to talk about what I need to talk about, and
Mhm.
just leaving the legacy of a great grateful fighter, one like a old style fighter, like the like the Julio Cesar Chavez, the Meldrick Taylor, like the guys that went out there and fought
Right.
and bit down, I'm so grateful for the last ref, like that. Whenever I got caught with that shot, that he didn't try to go and stop the fight. Like he let us, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
then he let us fight out the clinch. Like that's what I love. That was a we turned that into like a rock'em sock'em fight. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I like that. But I just want to be remembered as not just a great fighter, but an amazing fighter and a guy who was willing to get in there and just rock 'em, sock 'em, and get to it.
I love it, Alon. Well, Alon, appreciate you for taking time to come on today, man. It was a blessing having you on here, and I cannot wait to see what God's got in store for you in the future, man.
Thank you, brother.
Of course, you're always welcome on, man. God bless.
God bless, man. Be safe.
You as well, man.